On episode 218 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn how to warm up and strength train for tennis with special guest Dean Hollingworth. Hey there, welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is Mirban Aranchad, your host, and I'm happy to bring you another interview with a fantastic coach. And this coach for this episode is Dean Hollingworth, who I've talked to a few times on the podcast as well as on my annual tennis summits. Dean has well over 25 years of experience as a strength and conditioning coach, and he is a certified strength and conditioning specialist, a master tennis performance specialist by the International Tennis Performance Association, and part of Team PTR. He is also currently the Director of Fitness and Sports Performance at Club CDL in Montreal, where he works primarily with high-performance tennis players, and Dean has also worked with all levels of players, including ITF, ATP, and WTA pros. So he definitely has a lot of great experience with a wide range of tennis players. And so I actually talked with Dean for a long time and ended up splitting that interview into two parts. So this first part is going to be a deep dive into the dynamic warm-up as well as how to strength train properly for tennis. So as you know, I try my best to ask questions that probe into aspects of all sorts of subjects that will try to help you or will help you improve your game. And so in this particular episode, I ask about the importance of these two things, the warm up and strength training, but also, particular exercises that you should do and things that you should avoid, and how to program your warm-up and your strength training. So I hope that you find it helpful and enjoy it. And before I launch into the interview for you, I do have another tennis pun. I think this one is probably like the third or fourth one I've done. And this one goes as follows. A tennis racket got falsely accused of robbing an art gallery. It turns out that both the racket and the picture were framed. Hope you like that one, and prepare for some more during the podcast, especially next week. But that's all the warning I'll give you. But without further ado, I would like to bring you this interview with Dean on the warm-up and strength training. And like I said, definitely pay attention and take some notes because we mentioned a lot of great exercises on both fronts and a lot of other concepts that you should definitely implement in your training. All right, here's the interview with Dean. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to this special episode of the Tennis Files podcast, and I have with me returning guest, tennis fitness extraordinaire, Dean Hollingworth. Dean, welcome to the podcast. It's always awesome to connect with you, whether it's on the podcast or just talking smack on the phone or WhatsApp. So welcome.
Mirban, thank you again for having me on. I was just talking to somebody. I was trying to remember, is this our fourth or fifth time doing this together? Always a great time. And thank you for having me on. And thank you for everything you do for tennis.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I just love the sport just like you do and just trying to make an impact like you do as well. So really excited to get into this episode because we were talking last week, I think it was, and I really wanted to have you back on, and we brainstormed topics, and we came to the topic of the biggest biggest mistakes that tennis players make when they try to train their fitness. And so I understand you came up with like 5 billion of them or so. So I'm excited, to have them come from such a knowledgeable expert in this field. And I love fitness. It makes such a huge impact on your game as well as your longevity in the sport. If you want to keep playing the game, then you got to really pay attention to your fitness and train properly for the sport. So really excited to get into it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. We did discuss, and we really do believe when we spoke about it that this could be a really interesting topic. Could get heated, depending on people talking about the different views. And just one thing for all the listeners and the viewers is doesn't mean that these things are just specific to tennis, right? I mean, this can apply, I'm sure, to a lot of different sports. But we live in a tennis world. These are the things that I see happening most often within the element of fitness for tennis. And I'm really excited to share them with you. So the way I kind of organized it was kind of like a workout program. I went through what I saw in people's workouts, from the warm up through the speed and the development and the power training to the movement training to also like the weight room. So we're going to go through all of those. But I just want to say for sure, probably the most interesting one, and the one that if you're going to have to pay for my psychologist tomorrow, probably the one that will probably get me the most amped up and riled up with some of the things that I see. So the first thing I want to talk about is the warm up. And I think in tennis, from what I see with our junior players, and if I go to tournaments, and especially the adult players, is there's a lack of a warm up. Tennis players just really seem like they want to get to the club, get on the court and start playing. And, you may be able to get away with this during the summer, but as the colder months start coming, you really have to have some type of warm up and prepare your body for the movement and for a sport that is very demanding on one's body, and have it prepared for those stops, the starts, the rotations, so we can play a sport that we love and avoid the injury. That I think that is the number one thing is, first of all, you're warming up to prepare, you're ramping up the body to prepare it for tennis. And when I say ramping it up, I really don't like when I see people doing laps around a tennis court. I think it truly is a waste of time. First of all, just the way people are running around the court, it's sloppy. The motor patterns aren't very good. It doesn't look good. Let's just put it like that. Funny thing is, I was giving a lecture, or it was a conference at an ITA event, and I was doing something for the WTA. So I was talking about the warm up, and then one of the college coaches, she stands up and she asks me a question. She goes, "But everyone does it," and I'm like, just because everyone does it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Some of the worst words you can hear in the English language is, well, it's the way we've always done it. And I think we could actually set up our warm up to be even more dynamic and more beneficial, like get a skipping rope. I mean, skipping really teaches the athlete, the person, how to be very bouncy. And this is what we want from our athletes, is how do we get that elasticity? How do we get that bounciness so they can move better and get to the ball faster? And with that, also working on the mobility and the stability of the body that is needed for tennis. If we've talked about this. I'm sure I spoke about this. Well, I did a whole thing on hip mobility. I think it was wrist, all the upper body stuff. And it's like, if your body can't do it and you want it to do it in a game situation, it's going to end up doing something. But it doesn't mean it's going to be necessarily good for the body. So if you're lacking hip mobility and you can't get your hips in place, then your lower back or your knees are going to be asked to do something that they don't want to do. Or if you're lacking thoracic rotation, which is the upper back, how your body rotates through a swing, and you're stiff as a board and you look like this uni-turn type of thing, then of course your shoulder, your elbow. I mean, how many times can we go to a tennis club, I'm sure across North America, if not across the world, where we see people wearing, braces on their elbow, braces on their knee, braces here. I even see, some of the guys in the washroom putting on braces around their back for the lower back. And you know what? God bless them all. They really want to play, and I want them to play. And why not play healthy? Why not play so you're not in pain when you're on the court? So I think the warm up is really something that is lacking. People don't see the benefit of it a lot of times, and I cannot disagree with that so much. And here are 2 points. The warm up is more than just warming up. If you think of it like this, if you're doing a warm up with an elastic and doing lunges, let's say at the same time to warm up the shoulders and the legs, Well, think about this. If you end up doing 10 lunges and 10 elastic pull-aparts, let's say going forward, and then you do a reverse lunge with another pattern with the elastic. Let's say that's 20 lunges and 20 shoulder elastic pull-aparts. Well, if you play 3 times a week, right? My math isn't great, but I'm pretty sure that's 60 lunges. And then that's 60 lunges that you wouldn't have done that week. So we're working on, yes, the lunge, if performed properly, you're also going to get a good stretch. You're going to get strength. If you maintain your body stability, you're going to work on the stability of the body as a whole. So, I mean, after a month, you're looking at, 240 lunges. So it adds up. And that's only if you play 3 times a week. The other thing is that every warm-up should consist of movement patterns that are specific to your sport. Like jogging is not specific to tennis. I can't get that point across enough. Yes, maybe if you have to jog back to your bag to get your towel, that's the only time you really see that type of jogging. But you look damn good because you warmed up with jogging. But my point is, Maribel, if you could start working on your shuffling, on your crossover, doing some karaoke, some more movement-specific, tennis-specific patterns, that would be way more beneficial for you on the court. Now, here again, if we do the math, if I say, listen, do 10 minutes of movement patterns, I never want an athlete or anybody that I'm working with having their first explosive movement be in a match. Forget it. If that's the case, that's when you start pulling hamstrings. That's when you start pulling a groin or you hurt your shoulder because you're swinging so hard on that first ball. And your body the tissue is not prepared for the demand of the sport. Coming back to the time, 10 minutes, 3 times a week, working on some movement patterns, that's 30 minutes. After a month, it's 2 hours. So I think, getting that extra little bit is so important. And listen, I banged my head against the wall, and I got to say, the kids that are with me now for the last few years, they're really, I hope they're not listening to this. I don't want their heads growing. No, but they're really good at it, and I try and preach not just going through the movement patterns, but also going through with intent and purpose. Because you can do a knee hug and it's a waste of time, or you can do a knee hug that's beneficial. And you know what? That is, I think, the number one component for injury prevention is really a solid warm-up.
So when you talk about intent and purpose, can you dive a little bit deeper? What should the mindset be when we're doing the dynamic warm-up?
Well, the mindset should be the same mindset that you would have is if you were practicing with another player, with a coach, with a team or whatnot. Practice starts right. Beginning of practice is your warm-up. And the mindset should be, okay, I'm going through everything and I'm trying to perform every movement possible that I can do. I'm trying to do every movement as best as I can do it. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's the mindset, is to be involved. Because that's a great point. Sorry, I cut you off. That's a great point because the warm-up is not only essentially for the body, but it's for the mind, especially if we're in a tournament. I mean, that's when you start turning it on, right? You want to get that nervous system fire. You want to have some exercises that have some pop where we're getting the feet moving really quick and breaking into our movements and performing shadow swings.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons why people don't do the dynamic warm-up. One is maybe you're a big procrastinator and you leave the house late, to a match or practice, and you just don't have enough time. I think usually when you're younger, it's probably more of an ego thing, I'm invincible and I don't feel like doing it. But once you get your first injury, I think that's when it really pops in your head that, hey, you know what, I need to start taking this thing seriously, which is unfortunate that it takes a lot of people, adverse event in order to actually take the warm-up seriously. But I mean, I can tell you, for firsthand, it's made a huge difference in my performance. I used to not warm up like an idiot, and I wouldn't start really playing or getting into it until like the second set. And I lost so many matches because of not doing the dynamic warm up, because my body wasn't primed for the movements that we do playing tennis. So I really do appreciate you mentioning this really important thing. And one other thing, I thought those braces were just fashion statements. So they're actually useful.
Well, I think it's also like medals of honor of that these are my injuries,
right.
and I am continuing to playing. And to build on your point about why people don't do it, I know a lot of times, especially I think the kids and the adults actually, it's like, I'm starting practice in 5 minutes. My coach is waiting for me. I got to practice. But I think that's where we need also the help of the tennis coaches to be cognizant of the point that, listen, we want these people to continue. We want them to continue, pain-free, injury-free. And why not set up the first 5-10 minutes of a practice, making them a little bit more athletic? Because it's not just a warm-up. It's I said to the kids on Friday, I said, we did a specific warm up for that day. And I said, you're not going to be able to tell where the warm up ends and where practice starts, because they've actually just meshed into one another, getting them ready for what we're doing.
So in terms of the dynamic warm up, how should we structure it? You mentioned a lot of fantastic exercises, but do we want to do like a general, like some movement to get your heart going and the sweat going, and then do we want to do lower than upper than lower? Does it matter?
For me, the way I like doing it is I prefer some ground-based exercises to begin. So we'll do some shoulder work to loosen up the shoulder. We'll do some hip work, some thoracic rotation. Then we'll start moving a little more through dynamic movements, like doing the world's greatest stretch and things like that. And if you're doing those things right, that should start getting you warmer. I mean, the warm up we do is actually like, once you're done it, you're like, you're breaking a sweat from it. And then we're still not done. Then we'll skip rope, and then we'll go into the things I described of doing, some shuffling, some crossovers, and some, shadow swings, some real tennis specific base movements.
So Dean, I think a lot of players are probably not familiar with thoracic mobility, that term. So can you explain what that is?
So your spine is made up of various areas. So the top of the spine is cervical spine. Then we go into the thoracic spine, which is pretty much, if you feel the back of your head, you're going to feel a large bump, and pretty much down to the base of, just below the bottom of your rib cage is your thoracic spine. And below that, we have the lumbar spine. The thoracic spine is actually when I move like this, that's what's rotating. It's meant to rotate. And that can get tight. I mean, if you're sitting at an office desk, or, you don't stretch for a while, then for sure this can tighten up. And this is what really allows you to complete that swing, to come through at the hips and finish nicely with the arm in front of you. So it really is the middle, but it's more than the middle. It's the majority of your spine, but from, let's say, just the base of the neck down to the lower rib cage.
Awesome, Dean. So, I think it's really eye-opening, because not only does the dynamic warm-up help you in your matches, but it really is compiling, basically like a workout of, a lot of hours training, particular movements. And I was wondering, what is the delineation between a warm-up movement and an actual workout movement, if there is one? Because sometimes, like for instance, when we did our live workout together, actually the past few years on Tennis Summit, which coming up in April again, and I'm Dean will be on it, unless he refuses and hates me for some reason until then. But I felt like the warm up that you put me through itself was really tough, challenging. And so, I mean, is there any delineation at all, like between warm up and actual workout?
I really love that point that you bring up, because for some people the warm up is the workout, and it really depends on your overall fitness level. So, like I was saying before, if you end up doing so many lunges, or we're not talking about hundreds of lunges, but if you're doing lunges during your warm up, Now it's helping your strength. And eventually you don't feel that. It just becomes second nature. The big difference between, a lunge in a warm up and a lunge in a workout is probably that you add weight to it. Like you're loading that. It's an exercise that you would load.
Gotcha.
But for some people, it's the workout. So that's why when I said again before, the kids are going to have a hard time noticing when they both mesh. It's mainly because the warm up can be part of the workout also.
Cool, Dean. So in terms of any equipment, I'm sure you can probably have a great dynamic warm up without equipment, but are there any particular pieces that you would recommend that we toss in our bag?
Yeah, 100%. I think every tennis athlete needs to have some elastic bands, tubing, and two different ones. A really nice light one that you can use for your shoulder work, your external rotations, internal rotations. And then a stronger one where you'd want to do rowing and chest press, maybe as a warm up for the bigger muscles. And then also, as you know, that those small little elastics that go around the ankles that, you do various movement patterns with them to warm up the glutes.
Got it. And then any tips in terms of the different, variables as far as like, sets, reps, time under tension, tempo, anything like that?
Yeah.
For the warm up?
Yeah. So when we do, let's say we do a specific movement and I go, for whatever reason, I go with 5. I said, okay, we're going to do 5 thread the needles, or open books for people that know what that is for the warm up. And I tell anybody that gives the warm up, I said, listen, it's not written in stone. If you show up one day and you've just went through one of the biggest matches of your life the other day, or you had a real tough workout in the gym and you're feeling a little more not slow, but you could be feeling slow, a little more sore, just do some extra reps. I mean, it's just, it comes down to, Mariband, how much time do you have? And then, allotting time to the areas can be important too, more time to the areas that need it more. I mean, if you're feeling good in some areas, it can just be gone over quickly. But if you have a history with hamstring pulls or quad pulls, I would hope that person would spend more time on those areas taking care of them. Because, when you pull or when you pull a muscle or you get some type of injury, that injury always has the potential of coming back. And people are notorious. I mean, I am too. I get something, I take care of it, and then I kind of forget about it until it comes back again. But one of the biggest predictors of injury is past injury. So why wouldn't you focus on that a little more to help prevent that as much as possible?
Yeah, totally agree, Dean. So in terms of the length, I know you mentioned like 10 minutes a few times, but how long do you dedicate for the dynamic warm up for your students? And then is there any threshold where you're like, this is just too long, like it's counterproductive?
Yeah, you don't want it to go too long. Like I think when you start getting to the 25-minute, 30-minute mark, for sure, I know people's eyes are going like, are you insane? There's no way I'm doing 25 minutes, 30 minutes. You don't want it getting too long, because the last thing you want to do is to zap the athlete of all their energy or all their energy before they even begin. I like around that 15-minute mark. I think that's money. It's really, really good. And what I was really happy to be able to create this year for our sports study group was a 10-minute piece. It's literally 10 minutes and 6 seconds when I videotaped it, that really looks at the mobility, the stability, warm up of the shoulders, the hips, everything in that little 10-minute. And then just give me another 5-7 minutes of movement. And we're ready to roll. I mean, we really are ready.
Awesome, Dean. Any other thoughts on the warm up before we shift to the next one?
I would just throw this one last thing in that I'm trying to implement this year. I'm trying to get the athletes to compete against one another prior going to practice, because I think that getting those competitive juices, that emotional component to, I think that's really important. Plus, it heightens their awareness and what's going on. And it doesn't have to be anything more than putting a square on the wall and who can throw a tennis ball in it, 5 times, and let there be a little, not reward, but a little repercussion at the end. Like, okay, loser has to do 20 squats or something like that, or just, taking a tennis ball, hitting it back and forth. Who messes up? Just something to get that flow. I'm playing around with that right now, so I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, definitely let me know.
Yeah.
What's at me, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll just end it with this story that I probably have told you before, but I remember in the juniors there was like this championship tournament, like, so the top players in the Mid-Atlantic section where I'm from were playing, and before my match, like most of the players were warming up, and I was actually sitting in the car, and then I remember one of the players, actually Trent Huey, who was a great doubles player on the Pro Tour, so his mom like knocked on the passenger side where I was sitting, and she like looked angry, and she's like, "Go warm up," and I was just like, but I'm gonna get tired, and I had this like weird thought, like I want to save all my energy, I don't want to expend anything, but obviously that's totally wrong. So I've learned over the years how important the dynamic warm up is. So
let me ask you this question: How was your match?
Oh, not good at all. Yeah. It didn't go well, but cool, Dean. So let us shift over to the next one.
So the next one, we're going to talk about the weight room and strength training. And, when we were, when we were, yeah, exactly. When we were discussing various points of what could be, spoken about tonight, you mentioned this one, and I thought, yeah, you're 100% right. Tennis players, again, don't like to do much off of a tennis court. To bring them into the gym for 30 minutes, especially the adult population, it's quite tough to get them in there. And I think sometimes there's this myth around fitness and lifting weights in the tennis environment, more so than other sports, that it's not good for you. You're going to get tight. It's going to affect your game. Yes, it will affect your game. It will make it better. It will make you faster. It will make you more powerful, and it will make you more resilient. That's what we have to look at. And I think lifting weights also is a thing where you don't have, we talked about time limits for warm up. I see time limits for the gym also. I don't think you need to be in a gym for an hour and a half. I literally would shoot myself. I can't stay in the gym. I worked out today. I was there 45 minutes. Thank you very much. I want to get out. But then again, I don't talk to anybody. I have my earphones, not because I'm completely antisocial.
You usually don't talk to anybody, though, right?
Yeah. I'm not completely antisocial. But I just do what I have to do, and I focus on it. I think that's big, because I've said this before on your podcasts and at conferences and everything. People play tennis to get into shape when they should get into shape to play tennis. And if you're not working out, then you're really missing out, and especially for the junior athletes. If you're 16, I met a 16-year-old player not long ago, and she'd never worked out. She'd never lifted a weight or done anything. And I'm just like, wow, like you will not be able to move as far ahead as your dreams are in tennis if you're not getting stronger. There are so many sports out there that you would never even consider not going. Imagine trying to play, football and not going into the gym. Or hockey or basketball. I mean, forget it. It just doesn't happen. You really need this. And with Emma winning the U.S. Open, I was reading this article where they say she was doing hip thrusts with 200 kilos, not 200 pounds, 200 kilos. And, that's a boatload of weight. I mean, that really takes some solid strength. So obviously, strength is a huge foundation in her training component, and God bless her. That's really important. And you know what? If you want to be powerful, you have to have a certain amount of strength. Strength is really one of the essential building blocks for an athlete. Mm-hmm. So, when people say, "Oh, I don't have that much time," and I, you got to make time. Listen, if tennis is just something that you're enjoying as a pastime, great, then enjoy it. But if you're a junior player, you want to make it, you got to put time in the gym. It just does. It will not happen for you. And then the other side of that is you do go into the gym, please have a plan. Like, don't be one of those people looking around going, it's not a la carte, okay? It's not the gym is not a buffet. Okay, you don't go into the gym and say, I'll have a bit of that with a bit of that and a bit of that. There has to be some plan around it, okay? And I'm not talking about getting the guns all fired up with biceps and triceps. I'm talking about working muscles that are really important for the sport and also important in preserving the health of your body.
Well, the biceps are important for intimidation. When you do the racket flip and you flex, they scare them off.
Well,
the game's all mental, isn't that right?
Yes. And if you want to point to your head like this, well, you want to be sure that the bulge is happening underneath the t-shirt.
The bicep bulge. Just clarify. So, in terms of players, I totally agree. I think there is this perception that from a lot of people that, like, if you lift weights, you're going to become slow. And I love this guy, but I blame Michael Chang. If you're listening, which you're probably not, I remember that being said around him, and I don't even know if it's true or not, but I just remember that, some people said that he lifted weights and then he got slower. So again, I don't know if that was the case. But I heard that from a lot of fellow tennis players, and so why don't you become slow, and how do you become fast lifting weights as opposed to slow?
Well, first of all, you have to know what you're doing. That's the number one thing.
That's important for everything.
Well, yeah, especially brain surgeons. But you really,
it's easy.
Yes, I stayed at a Holiday Inn. You want to go in there with a plan that will be beneficial for your sport. So why do people get slower? Because maybe they're not doing the right thing. If you're going in there and you're lifting light weights for heavy reps, that is not going to get you strong. This toning type of thing. It ain't happening. If you if you get stronger, then you have to convert that into power by doing plyometrics. So it's not just training in the gym will help you for sure, but you have to do some extra plyometric power training at the same time. But if you're talking about, a 40, 50-year-old man who hasn't done a lot of weight training, in the last 20 years, has lost muscle mass, then, by going in there and just getting stronger, you will move better. There's just no two ways about it. I remember Michael Chang. He had legs like tree trunks. I mean, they were huge for sure. But you look at a guy like Courier, who from what I understand, was one of the first guys to start working out. And he started becoming he started climbing in the ranks until everyone else started it also, as he puts it.
Yeah. So what can we do to, I guess, not let the workouts affect our game too much? Because I do remember, and I probably was, having the wrong program and everything, but sometimes I would do some heavy lifting and then play tennis and then feel like, I was kind of off and all that. So any tips in that regard?
Yeah. I mean, I would not lift weights prior to getting on a court or taking a lesson.
Oops.
Number one right there. Yeah. That's not something you want to do. Of course, you're going to go out there and just feel like, your legs are going to be, mush, or your upper body's not going to want it to do what you want it to do. That's something you get off the tennis court, go into the gym, and just, do a little bit of legs, and my personal point of view, and I know some people would argue this, I'm not a big fan of machines, like a leg press, a leg extension, a leg curl. Do something where you have to stand and balance while you're doing it, like a split squat or a single leg rear elevated split squat, or try, like single leg squats are actually quite hard. Working, doing bridges and things like that will really target the legs. And then, for your upper body, you don't really need a lot of chest work. I mean, just a little bit so you look good in your t-shirt, but working the back muscles so everything stays in place in terms of the shoulder blades and the shoulder, and getting the shoulder strong. it doesn't have to be anything more. Honest to God, 25 to 30 minutes. And please don't forget, core.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so when would you implement full body workouts versus breaking them up? Does it depend on how many days a week you train?
Well, ideally, you want to train each body part twice a week. So what I do is when someone comes and they say, "Hey, listen, and I'm trying to get into shape for tennis," my first question is, "Okay, how much time do you have? What kind of time are you going to devote to the gym?" Now, if someone says, "Oh, I'm happy to come in 4 times a week, I can work out for 45 minutes," hey, here you go. Here's a split routine, and you can go with that. But a lot of times people 2 to 3 times is max. So if it's 2 to 3 times, I may do a day 1 and a day 2. And then day 3 would be, day 1, day 2 being a split. And then day 3 would be a complete body workout.
Got it.
So we hit each muscle.
I know we have chatted about.
Yeah.
No, sure. Sounds good. So in terms of, we've got the different, characteristics that we can train, strength, power, hypertrophy, which I probably pronounce horribly, and endurance. So is there like a general hypertrophy maybe? Is there a general a general track that you would follow? Like let's give you an actual a scenario. So I guess maybe a 3.5 or a 4.0 player who doesn't really lift much. Maybe they lifted a little bit in high school, but then they stopped. So is there a progression you would follow in regards to developing each of those?
Well, I think the first thing that's really important is you don't want to start lifting heavy. If you haven't lifted weights in a long time, or if you've never lifted weights, we're not going to start going with a rep scheme of 3 to 5 and try and get max strength out of that. That would be a recipe for disaster. I think for a lot of the adult population, I'm very comfortable working, 10 to 12 reps in between there. That will give you, some good muscle growth. It will help you with your strength. It's a little bit of benefits of everything. Unless I had a player 40 years old, let's say, that really wanted to compete. And even then, I'm not sure I would start working on just pure strength. When you start lifting weight, that heavy weight, I think a lot of times it's, your risk of injury could go up. I know some people are going to think, oh, no, there's always a risk of injury. And that's true, especially if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that's why I think people should go and find a qualified trainer and just have the exercises taught to them properly. Because if you're going in there blind, it's a recipe for disaster. Because I've seen people using, it's funny and yet not funny, but just using the equipment completely wrong. You're not supposed to have your head on that. That's where someone sits. But
Gotcha. So again, another scenario, actually this pretty much the same scenario of players. So they're kind of a beginner in terms of working out. Can you just give us 3 or 4 different exercises that you think, it would be great to include on most people's workouts?
Yeah, for sure. I think going with, something for the lower body, like a split squat or reverse lunge, I think is great. The reverse lunge is a little more dynamic, a little more demanding. I like it a lot, especially if you step backwards, come forward, and you don't touch the ground. It really puts a good balance element into it. And I prefer working the lower body, as opposed to doing squats. Someone can say, well, what's wrong with squats? Nothing wrong with squats. Squats are great. But people tend to have a lot of imbalances. And I think the split squat will have a better time perhaps evening out the body, because you may feel like, wow, it's really hard on this side, it's really hard on the other. So, you could play to that. One arm row, whether from a mid range or from a high range on a cable, I think that's really, really important. Again, single arm row, like a cable row, not just lat pull downs. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I think if you're training your body for tennis, it's good to try and even things out. And then, you want to look at some core, doing some chops. So, the core doing chops, what I love about that is if I'm doing a half kneeling chop and bringing, I think I froze there for a second, and bringing the cable across my body, my upper body's still getting a good work. I have to stabilize my pelvis, have my core engaged. So I'm getting a lot of bang for the buck out of that.
Got it. So, my mind's random. I was thinking for the one arm row, I'd place like 10 French fries in front of me and just
keep rowing.
10 reps now.
Yeah, just pull it towards you. And then one more. I mean, you really want to do something like, to work the glutes and the hamstrings. You could just do a bridge, a single leg bridge, which is actually quite hard to do. Or you put your foot up on a bench or on a Swiss ball or something. If you don't feel comfortable doing like a single leg deadlift or something like that, which is challenging, and you need to be taught for sure how to do that well.
Yeah, I just love how there's so many different movements to achieve what you want to do, and in progressions like when we were doing the live workout last year. You had me do the regular hip thrusts, and then you had me do. I think you had me hold like a medicine ball, up top, and then afterwards we did the single leg. Yeah. So that's great. And one of my favorite exercises for the lower body is the Bulgarian split squat. What I think. Yeah, and is that the same thing as the rear leg elevated split squat? Yeah, it's the exact same
thing. The rear leg elevated, the Bulgarian. Yeah. I mean, talking about that exercise, I mean, you must really hate your viewers because that'll kill them. I mean, if you haven't worked out in a long time, you do not want to do that day one, because you will never go back to the gym. And having said that, that's a big, a big red flag there that people have to be wary of, is that, hey, first day, take it easy, please. Just go in there, build it up. Don't go in there trying to set, personal records day one. And I think that's the problem sometimes with people going to the gym. A, the routine is way too long, and B, nobody wants to be crawling out of bed, literally to the shower trying to heat up their body because it's so sore. And then how do you play tennis the next day? I mean, we got to be smart and take it easy and build up. It's all about progression.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, also in terms of like using weights, I mean, if somebody asks you, hey, Dean, how much weight should I use? Like, I know that's a super general question. There's a lot of variables, but what's your general advice?
It goes back to when you start, if you don't know how much weight you're supposed to use, grab something, nothing too high, obviously. I hate to say just grab something, but start with 10 pounds. It's fine. See how your body feels with it. If it's too hard, you'll know right away, go lower. If it's too easy, hey, you go up. And it'll take you one or two workouts to find that happy spot with your workout. And then the other important thing is you got to progress. Like, don't tell me you've been using 30s for 3 months. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, you're not getting any more gains. Forget it. You're allowed to, the rule of thumb is you're allowed about 10% increase every week, so if you have 30s, you can go to 35 and so on and so forth. I know it's more than 10%, but just take it easy, because I get that asked by the kids. Like, we just restarted beginning of September. Like, Coach, how much should I hold? I'm like, well, why don't you just try something that 212s or something, 212 and a half. Try. If it's easy, then, keep it and write it down. And I think that's important too. Write down your progress. See what you've been doing. Don't get stale or get stuck in a rut because you haven't increased or you haven't challenged yourself in 4 weeks.
Yeah, beautiful stuff. So, Dean, when I was talking to Satoshi Ochi, who is head strength and conditioning coach of USTA, he gave me this formula, and I was wondering, if you could just give your thoughts and critique it, because I'm just curious to get another viewpoint. So his formula for strength training, at least, is 3 or more warm-up exercises, and then you're going to do 1 or more lower body push, 1 or more lower body pull, 1 or more upper body push, and then 2 or more upper body pull. And then you're going to do, I keep saying 1 or more, but I'll just say 1 shoulders, 1 hips, and 1 core.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? I mean, I think the point of that is just to like hit all the different areas like somewhat evenly, except you account for like a little bit more imbalances in the upper body pull. For we do two of those to account for the imbalances. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think first of all, doing prior to doing, let's say a split squat, since we've been talking about split squat. Yeah, you don't grab weights the first time. You should be doing a little bit of a warm up set, building up the weights, slowly until you get to a point where, okay, I'm ready to roll, And again, that depends on the day. Maybe some days you're a little more tight. Some days you feel like you're ready to go. That's fine, as long as you're not injuring yourself. When we talk about push, pull, hinge, knee, squat, knee dominant exercises, a pull is essentially you're doing back. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Pulls are back training, pushing is chest and shoulders. So traditionally you do want to have more back exercises or more pull exercises than push. So, I would never say, and as I said before, I would never say that a tennis player shouldn't work chest. I just don't think, in my opinion, you should get under a bar and do bench press. I just think that's not that great for the athlete. I think there's a lot more benefit by standing up and doing a chest press with a cable system that's much more dynamic. It's going to have a more effect on my body because I have to stabilize my core, I have to stabilize my leg. And I put up a couple of great exercises on my Instagram account where I'm rotating with the exercises and getting involved. That's, now, geez, we're hitting a whole new section here because now can we take the exercises and start making them, I hate using the word sports, sports specific training, but making them a little more rotational, a little more dynamic in terms of the sport we're playing. Like you can do a row and rotate. You can do a row and stand on one leg. And again, same thing. I think I've said this to you. I've said this a couple of times, the front of our bodies for the beach, the back of our bodies for athletic performance. So right. One chest or one push, two pulls, same for the glutes and the hamstrings.
Got it. Cool. Appreciate the site on that.
Yeah. Well, sorry,
cool.
Sorry.
So you think it's decent?
Yeah. No. He's a super guy and extremely knowledgeable. Yeah. But then again, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I think just putting out a formula like that, again, that's why I think you need somebody to say, yeah. You know what? Your core is a little weak. You may need more than one exercise. We may need to focus this on a little more. Or, wow, there's such a discrepancy between the right side and the left side. We may have to look at other things to go. Sometimes it's like you said, it's a formula. It's great and it'll probably work. But if you really want to take this a little more seriously and have something, not a cookie cutter, but something more specific to your needs, that's why I think you need to find someone and say, hey, listen, I think you need a little more work here and let's focus on that for the next little while.
Awesome. Thanks, Dean. Yeah, great points there. And yeah, that's the formula he gave, but I think he did give some disclaimers as well. Yes. And, I think that's a good, general workout. So I just, I was re-looking at some of the summit footage for fitness, and that was a really good one. Yours was awesome. So, I just want to mention Satoshi, ran into it in him at the Open, actually. So I could probably talk about the subject for a long time, but it's hilarious. Like we've only hit 2 and it's been 47 minutes. So
we may have to pick up the pace here a little. Yeah, I don't want people falling asleep. Yeah.
No. But it's I think this is a good
better.
one.
I promise you that because it's going to get better in the next couple of minutes.
Oh, you're going to take shots? I see. Okay.
Am I going to take shots or do shots? I think is the question. Yeah. No.
Both. But Dean, any last thoughts on this one? I'll let you close on anything if you want to mention it.
I think that if the tennis player can find 20 to 30 minutes, and don't think that 20 or 30 minutes isn't a long time, because if you use the formula you just told me, right? Like 2, 1, 2, that's only about 6, 7 exercises. that, you can cover the body with 5 to 7 exercises. And that can have such a tremendous effect, positive effect, not only on your game, but on your body. And listen, doesn't matter how good you are. When you're hurt, you're sitting watching other people play. And I just think in a lot of times, injuries can be, I'm not going to say injuries can be always avoided, but I really think that for a lot of people, just having some extra fitness can help you avoid a lot of injuries.
All right. I really hope you enjoyed part 1 of my interview with Coach Dean Hollingworth. And Dean, really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for coming on to the podcast. If you found value from this podcast, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review for the Tennis Files podcast. I think we have like 98 or 99 reviews, it might be. So it would be really cool to get over 100. So definitely would appreciate that if you enjoy the show. To leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. In addition, I would like to leave you with a quote, as I often do at the end of the show. And this one is by Lori Deschene. Apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly, but Lori said, "Beating yourself up for your flaws and mistakes won't make you perfect, and you don't have to be. Learn, forgive yourself, and remember, we all struggle. It's just part of being human." This is a great concept to carry in mind when you're playing tennis, because it's only human to make mistakes. Nobody is perfect. And so if you just make a couple of mistakes in a row, it doesn't make any sense to start screaming at yourself for it. Just reset, have your routine in between points, and just go for the next point. So, alrighty then. Well, thanks a lot for listening, and please tune in to part 2 of my interview with Dean as we talk about 3 more mistakes that you make in your tennis fitness training. All right, have a great one. I will see you soon, and until then, have a fantastic week.